Part 13. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 121. Chapter 121. Doesn't she just have a backing? Cheers. The atmosphere in the small box was quite high. Although there were only 3 of them, they were still very happy. I didn't expect you to succeed so quickly, it really surprises me. Zhao Xian had already gone to see the samples this morning. Yesterday, Su Yun and Yan specially left some samples for her to try. The taste was really pleasing. Sister Zhao, I said it was almost done 2 days ago, Arian said while eating. It's not that fast. When Sister Yun was the fastest before, she could produce a new product in just a month. Really, so powerful, then you can make a lot of money this year. Just hearing about the output makes me very excited, not to mention that after seeing it, Zhao Xian absolutely trusts the quality of her products. That's not true. If you don't have inspiration and good ideas, you may not be able to produce one in 2 or 3 months. I hope you don't fire me by then. He turned to look at her and said half-jokingly. Zhao Xian laughed loudly. Even if I want to fire you, I have to be able to do that. I remember when you came here. After a pause, she seemed to have found the target of her complaints. She turned to Arian and said, you haven't come at that time, so you don't know. At the beginning, I didn't want her 100 times, but Wang and I didn't want her. I almost fell out and couldn't kick her away. At that time, I suspected that she must have a background. She slapped her palm on the table with a bang, and she said angrily. Su Yun. Wu Arian, who was being confided in, gave her a meaningful look, but no, there was a backstage, and not only that, but it was also very hard. Who is Sister Yun's backstage? Arian smiled slyly and asked in a deliberately gossipy manner. Zhao Xian glanced back at Su Yun and curled her lips. I found out later that she had no backing. I couldn't kick her away. I had no choice but to give her questions and deliberately make things difficult for her. I said, well, if you can't pass the test, even if the King of Heaven is protecting you, you have to get out of here. As a result, she. Haha, from that time on, I knew that she didn't have a backstage or a backstage. She was her own backstage. She has such a good talent and such outstanding abilities. I'm not afraid of you changing jobs. Let me tell you something here. If you keep it secret, you will become a legend in this industry in no time. This praise can be said to be very high. Su Yun said lightly, you are too generous. I'm telling the truth. But I agreed beforehand that even then, you have to help me and the new students, and you can't just turn around and forget about us. Zhao Xian drank as he talked. He drank a lot unknowingly, and his words were a bit loud. Sister Zhao, you are drunk, Yan said while supporting her. Zhao Xian shook his head. Drunk? Don't you know that I can never get drunk after 1,000 drinks? As far as my drinking capacity is concerned, I have never been afraid of anyone. Let me tell you, when I go out to discuss projects, I always. Before he could finish the next sentence, he felt sick and stopped, covering his mouth. Sister Zhao, are you okay? How about we go home? Seeing her like this, Arian said worriedly. Go home? It's too early to go home. It's rare that I have time to come out and chat. It's rare that I and you. He patted the back of Su Yun's hand directly, then after thinking about it, he turned around and patted Arian again. He held their hands and said, I like you both. Everyone in the company is afraid of me and thinks I'm a monster. I put pressure on them all day long and make things difficult for them. It's not that I make things difficult for them. It's because this industry is so cruel and the competition is so fierce. If you don't climb up, you're waiting to be eliminated. People are eliminated. She seemed to have a lot of things on her mind, which she had been holding back for a long time, and finally found a place to vent them. Honestly, it's okay for us to do projects no matter how stressed we are, we can win over clients and negotiate contracts, but perfumers, really? Shaking her head and sighing, she said, let alone freshmen, in Suzhou, even if you look across the country, you can only find outstanding ones, let alone those who can be ranked in the world. Our company has always had no shortage of perfumers, but there's always been a shortage of good perfumers. Suyun, I see hope in you. He raised his hand and patted her on the shoulder. The force was quite strong and made her shoulder sink. This year's annual perfume competition, the freshmen will win the championship. Facing her complaints and confession, Suyun was silent for a long time and then spoke slowly. At her words, Zhao Xian seemed to suddenly wake up from the wine and looked at her with wide eyes, while Arian also looked at her in surprise. You know, you have been with her for so many years. Although she has been working tirelessly and the perfumes she has made have been hits one after another, she has never been so confident. Such a confident tone, as if the championship was already within her grasp. Suyun, actually. Zhao Xian straightened up and took a deep breath, being in the top 3 is already pretty good. Win the championship. Although there are few elites in the field of perfumers, because the entry threshold is high, not everyone can do it. Those who can get into it are basically those with some ability. Although she had held Suyun up very high just now and truly believed that she was very capable, the country is so big. Who knows if there is a second Suyun or if there are others who are also very capable. Of course, there are also some seniors with senior qualifications. Who will win the championship is probably still unknown. Zhao Xian was afraid that what she just said had put too much pressure on her, so she tried to pull back. Actually, you don't have to be the champion. The freshmen are still young in the perfume industry. If you can. Yes, you believe me, Suyun shook her hand and stood up, I'm going to the bathroom. Watching her walk out, Zhao Xian was dumbfounded. Wu Arian was also stunned and kept in a daze. The two looked at each other, and Zhao Xian pointed in the direction of the door. Was she so confident before? Did you originally want to be so crazy? But when the words came to my mouth, I felt that it was inappropriate and seemed to be a derogatory term, so I changed my words. Wu Arian shook her head like a rattle. No, never. Don't sound so confident. She doesn't care much about whether she can compete in competitions, whether she can win prizes, or whether the perfume has been put into production. In her words, Luo Yuanhang can operate these and he will know how to operate them. In fact, she also revealed that she was worried that her newly prepared perfume would have problems. Although she had tried it many times, she still felt uneasy. Arian probably understood that it was the failure in the previous competition and being ridiculed by the entire internet that made her there is a psychological shadow. Unexpectedly, after leaving Luo Yuanhang and her new life, she seemed to be a new person and really got a new life. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 122. Chapter 122. Are you the invisible rich second generation? Suyun went to the bathroom and passed other private rooms on the way. Someone happened to come in and out. The moment the door opened and closed, she caught a glimpse of a familiar person. Although it was just a glimpse, she could be sure that she was right. I went straight to the toilet, washed my hands, and dried them patiently. When I walked out, I saw a tall figure leaning against the opposite wall. I saw it right. Chu Chen put his long legs away and stood up straight. Master Chu's vision is never wrong. Suyun smiled slightly. Please give way. Chu Chen deliberately occupied half of the road, blocking her way. What are you doing here? Suyun chuckled lightly. Whatever you are doing here is what I am doing here. Why, this hotel has also been included in Master Chu's property. I can't come. You still refuse to go back to Chu's house? Chu Chen frowned, dissatisfied with her attitude. The Chu family, I will go back after a pause, she said, now is not the time. Then when was your case, Chu Chen asked, and when she didn't answer, he said quietly, I heard about your case. It wasn't very beautiful, but at least it didn't cause any trouble for the Chu family. Since you refuse to come back, you must be careful when doing things outside. You cannot afford to lose the Chu family's face. Don't worry, I have nothing to do with the Chu family. Su Yun looked at him coldly, looked past him, and waved goodbye. Chu Chen stood for a few seconds, and when he turned around again, no one was in sight. Squinted his eyes slightly, the light under his eyes was sharp. Neither Zhao Xian nor Wu Arian expected that it was Su Yun who drank too much in the end. After she came back from the bathroom, she seemed to have opened up the drinking circuit of Ren Du. She ordered 2 boxes of beer and 2 bottles of red. She also wanted to order white, but they held her down. In Su Yun's words, this is her first work in the freshman year, and it has extraordinary significance. It's really fun to work with them, so I must have a few drinks. A few glasses, then a few bottles, a dozen bottles. As a result, something went wrong when I was sending someone home before I left. Zhao Xian patted Su Yun's face and said, Su Yun, where do you live? Even if you want to call a taxi, you still have to tell someone your address. What's more, with her current condition, she might not be able to trust her just to give her address and get her to the car. She would have to deliver the person anyway. And #UN%. Zhao Xian didn't hear the vague words clearly. He frowned, looked at Yan, lowered his head and approached her. What did you say? You Jing Haoding. This time, Zhao Xian heard it clearly, but he couldn't believe it. Scared? Jing Haoding, she was surprised. Do you know where Jing Haoding is? Where do you live? Are you the invisible rich second generation? Don't scare me, okay? She couldn't believe it, but Arian reacted. This address is probably the address where Mr. Si lives. It is a luxurious villa area. The people who live there are either rich or noble. It is really not something that ordinary working class people can afford. Let alone buying it, even renting it, the price is unimaginable. It's no wonder that Zhao Xian was so surprised. She didn't even know who Su Yun's new boyfriend was. Because he agreed to her promise, he was afraid that Su Yun would let it slip, so he quickly passed her and said, Sister Zhao, I know where she lives. Let me take her back. It's quite late. You have to go to work tomorrow, so you should go first. Let's go back. But she said she lived. Zhao Xian was still shocked and had not recovered from the shock. I know, she is actually talking about the Pinghu garden next to Yujing Palace, which is probably separated by 2 roads. Arian said vaguely. Sister Yun always used to joke, she wants to buy a house in Yujing Haoding in the future. She was drunk and was talking about it. This explanation seemed to make sense. Zhao Xian breathed a sigh of relief and said, scared me. Haha, that's not it. When she wakes up tomorrow, we will laugh at her. Forget it, I'm not worried about you being alone, so I'd better go with you. Sighing, Zhao Xian reached out to stop the taxi, opened the door and wanted to go with them. After placing Su Yun in place, Arian sat in and blocked the car door. Forget it, Sister Zhao, I'll take her back. If I can't take care of her, I won't leave at night. You can't do that. You have to go to work tomorrow, so don't follow us. It's hard work. I'll send you a message at most. This. Zhao Xian hesitated for a moment, but felt that what she said made sense, so she nodded. Well, you must pay attention to your safety. If you have any questions, send me a message. He took a photo of the license plate number again and said goodbye. The car started and gradually drove away. Arian breathed a sigh of relief and turned to look at Su Yun, who had fallen asleep. She was speechless. I have been with her for so many years and I have never seen her drunk. Sister Yoon today is a bit abnormal. The taxi was no longer allowed to go in when it arrived at Yujing Houding, and was stopped by the guard. She didn't know which building or apartment Su-yoon lived in. She didn't know Si Yao's number either. She had no way to contact him, so she had no choice but to wake her up. Sister Yoon, we're here, which building do you live in? Arian asked, patting her cheek gently. Well. She frowned and opened her eyes drowsily, don't make any noise. After saying that, his eyes closed again. Woo Arian. How about checking her phone? But the taxi refused to stay for long and had already let them get out of the car and drove away. Su-yoon leaned on her body and it was a bit difficult for her to find her mobile phone. Sister Yoon, wake up, let's go home and sleep again, he coaxed her while trying to find her cell phone. At this moment, the car lights in the distance were dazzling, and they quickly drove to their side. Yan hugged Su-yoon and subconsciously took 2 steps back. Unexpectedly, the car slowly stopped in front of them. The car window was lowered, and Si Yao was sitting inside. He frowned and looked at the two of them. What's going on? Seeing him, Arian seemed to have seen a savior. Mr. Si. We went out to celebrate, but Sister Yoon was drunk. What to do? She was so scared looking at the CEO's eyes. Sister Yoon, please wake up quickly. You can't be so deceptive. Boarding. Fortunately, Si Yao didn't say much. Instead, he took the initiative to open the car door and came out to take Su-yoon from her arms. There was a sudden lightness on her body, and Woo Arian also breathed a sigh of relief. Well, Mr. Si, since Sister Yoon is already home, I'll leave first. You stay. Unexpectedly, Si Yao actually stopped her and said, it's not easy to take a taxi here. No, it's okay. I'll fight you when I walk down to the main road. She said that this little thing didn't matter, but Si Yao then said, Su Feng will take you back later. Yan. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 123. Chapter 123 I won't drink with drunkards. Woo Arian saw for the first time in her life what a mansion on earth is. Regardless of the area and decoration, the series of security measures before entering are astonishing, not to mention the private garden, several luxury cars parked peacefully in the yard, and the flowers and plants that have been obviously carefully trimmed. There is no sound everywhere, but 3 words are revealed everywhere, not short of money. Su Feng opened the door in front, and Si Yao held Su-yoon horizontally. He looked quite thin, but he didn't expect to be so strong. There was no sign of any difficulty in holding Princess Su-yoon. After standing in the yard in a daze for half a minute, Arian came to her senses and followed her in. Seeing that Si Yao had placed Su-yoon on the sofa, she hurriedly walked over to help pour a glass of water, but she couldn't find the location of the water dispenser. She wanted to cover her with a blanket or something, but she didn't know where the blanket was. Secondly, her real boyfriend is right in front of me, and I seem to be a little troubled. She wanted to leave, but Si Yao didn't speak and she didn't dare to move. Just standing there, I instantly felt that my situation was very embarrassing. Mr. Si, She hesitated, but took the initiative to speak. Si Yao glanced back at her and said, Su Feng, if you send her back, make sure you do it safely. No need, I can actually do it myself. Arian glanced at the taciturn Su Feng, and waved her hands quickly. Su Feng pursed his lips, okay. Woo Arian. In front of these 2 men with completely different styles, she seemed to have no right to refuse. However, it was indeed very difficult to take a taxi in this rich gathering place in the middle of the night, So she did not refuse. Then, I'm leaving first. She glanced at Suyun, whose cheeks were already red. Sister Yoon drank a lot tonight. If possible, it's best to give her some hangover soup, which will make her feel better. Yes, Yao nodded, his eyes seemed to be fixed on Suyun, and he didn't care at all as the two people behind him left. Well, I'm so thirsty. Suyun licked her dry lips and let out a soft moan. Yao. I really want to pick up my wife and spank her. What should I do? I'm so thirsty. This voice was a bit coquettish, and her mouth pouted unconsciously. She looked a little aggrieved, but also very cute. Someone stared at it for a few seconds, then finally got up and went to pour water. Considering her stomach and intestines, he took a glass of warm water, lifted her up slightly, and put the cup close to her lips. As soon as she touched the water, she took 2 big gulps greedily and drank half the glass of water. However, after drinking, the person lay down heavily again, and then muttered in a low voice, "It doesn't taste good, it doesn't taste good at all." Yao's eyebrows twitched and he put down his cup. "Suyun, don't go too far." Suyun was in a daze, as if someone was calling her name. She opened her eyelids with difficulty and saw a hazy figure, Yao. Her lips moved and she called his name. Yao Ying hummed from his nostrils. "Why are you here?" Yao sat up unsteadily. He was afraid that she would fall on him, so he quickly reached out to support her and sat down on the edge. As soon as he sat down, he was hugged by her like a koala. "I miss you so much. I had a lot of things to say that I wanted to criticize, but I swallowed them all. That's all, let it all rot in your stomach." He raised his hand and placed it gently on her back, coaxing her soothingly, "If you can't drink, just drink less. If you drink so much wine outside, what should you do if something goes wrong?" Thinking about it, it was lucky that he was sent back safely. Fortunately, he came back in time. Otherwise, would she have planned to sleep outside this late at night? "I don't drink much." Suyun looked at him and smiled stupidly as they separated a little distance, "just." He stretched out his palm, waved his 5 fingers in front of his eyes, and clasped his fingers with the other hand seriously. 1, 2, 3, just 5 cups. Not much at all. Let me tell you, Zhao Xin drinks. She has so many talents, she is already drunk at the beginning. He. Yao. What a drunkard. You are so drunk that you still make fun of others. You are not allowed to drink when I am away from now on. He decided to restrict her a little, otherwise, this little girl would be in trouble. "Then if you're here, can I drink?" Suyun raised her face and smiled at him. "Then let's have a drink. We have to drink together when we get married, and I haven't had a drink with you yet." She just looked up at him with her neck raised, her cheeks were crimson, her eyes were as crescent-shaped, and she kept giggling. She smelled strongly of wine, but even so, Yao found her particularly charming. That smile rippled all the way into his heart, making his heart flutter with laughter. "Okay, I'll drink with you," he said, "but not now." "Why?" She waved her hand and became very unhappy. "I won't drink with a drunkard, I'll drink until you sober up." "I'm not a drunkard," he muttered and lost his temper, but he still knew that he was talking about her. "Well, you're not, I am." Yao followed her words, "but it's very late now, you need to take a rest first and be obedient." He would not argue with her until he coaxed her to lie down. It is foolish to argue with a drunkard, but when she sobers up next year, she must be taught a lesson. He watched her lie down again and found a thin blanket to cover her. Just as he was about to get up, she grabbed her wrist and said, "You are not allowed to leave." "I'm not leaving, I'm going to drink some water." "You are not allowed to drink water. You are not allowed to leave." At this moment, she was as coquettish and willful as a child. Yao had no choice but to sit down again. "Okay, I won't leave if I don't drink water. Hearing this, she was finally satisfied. Not only did she hold on, she also pulled her wrist over and rested her face on his hand. Don't lie to me. Sci-Yao sat for a while and felt the warmth in his palms. Her breath sprayed on his hands, which made him feel a little itchy and make his mind wander. However, she slept so soundly and innocently, completely unaware of how much of a test her unintentional actions were. This tormenting little woman. I moved my hand a little and felt the strength of her pull. She was still so unsteady even when she fell asleep. He laid her down, then moved a little bit, and finally took out his hand. Seeing her twisting her face twice, her hand still grasping it, as if she was looking for his hand, he conveniently put a warm hand on the side. The baby was stuffed into her palm. With the grip, she calmed down a lot, snorted twice and then fell asleep again. Standing up, Sci-Yao felt that his legs and arms were numb. Slowly walked to the table, poured himself a glass of water to moisten his dry throat, and then looked at the sleeping little woman. Thinking of the sobering soup Arian mentioned, he felt it was necessary to prepare a portion. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 124. Chapter 124. What a charming monster. Su-Yun had a headache when she woke up. When she opened her eyes and saw the familiar environment, she was still a little confused. The thin blanket on her body slipped down, and there was a faint sweet fragrance in the air. Sleepwalking. I seem to remember having dinner and drinking with Zhao Xian and Yan in the private room to celebrate, but what next? I have a vague impression, but it's not very real. As soon as I got off the ground and wanted to stand up, I felt dizzy. I shook my head and quickly sat down again, only then did I feel better. Are you awake? Sci-Yao saw the scene when he walked out of the kitchen, but he was not sure whether she was sober at this moment or the next round of drunken nonsense. You picked me up, she asked uncertainly, rubbing her temples with one hand. Your assistant brought you back. He crossed his arms and leaned against the door frame to look at her. It happened that I met her at the gate of the community. If it weren't for luck, neither of them would even be able to get through the store. That's really a thank you for your hard work, Su-Yun said somewhat sarcastically. She didn't expect that her drinking capacity was so bad. After all, she never drank much in her memory. In the past, the discipline at home was strict and it was impossible for her to drink like this. Later, when she was with Luo Yuanhang, she had no chance to meet him. This time, it was indeed a bit out of control. Maybe it was because of what Chu Chen said. It's a bit hard. Sci-Yao stood up straight, lowered his arms and walked towards her. When he got closer, he bent down, put his hands on both sides of her body, and approached her. Why don't you think about how to repay me? Su-Yun smiled, hooked her hands around his neck, and looked up at him. I don't mind, but I smell like alcohol, so I'm afraid of being smoked. Before he could finish speaking, his lips were sealed. Sci-Yao kissed her fiercely, as if he was retaliating for her misbehavior. He was not as gentle as before, biting her lips with a little force with his teeth. She frowned in pain. She felt a little pain, and Sci-Yao let go of her. The fire in his eyes had not yet faded. Do you still dare next time? She raised her hand to cover her lips and could almost feel the teeth marks on them. She frowned. You are a dog. Sci-Yao touched her forehead and the tip of her nose and said, No. I am a wolf. I will eat your wolf one bite at a time. His eyes were sharp, he was so close, and his voice was full of danger and temptation. Su-Yun looked at him, suddenly pounced forward, accurately covered his lips, and bit his lips hard. Iffier. This time, Sci-Yao gasped in pain. The faint blood stain on the corners of his lips came into his eyes, and Su-Yun raised the corners of her lips. If you are a wolf, then so am I. I can't tell who will eat whom. He raised his hand and gently rubbed the blood on his lips with his thumb. He glanced at it indifferently and said, "If I can be eaten by you, I will be happy to eat it." The low-pitched voice, coupled with his casual and flirtatious movements, the slightly yuppie eyes and the faint smile on the corners of his lips, all together became a powerful visual impact, and Soo-yoon was obviously. I felt my heart tremble, and I felt like I could fall in an instant. What a charming monster! How can someone in this world look so good and still be a man? Still her man. When I think of this last point, I feel very happy and feel a little proud. What smells so good? She sniffed and sneezed uncontrollably. The ambiguous and warm atmosphere was swept away by the sudden sneeze. "It's sobering soup." He let go of his hand and stood up. He said, "I'll bring it to you to drink." Soo-yoon sat up. Sio had already brought a bowl and placed it in front of her. "Drink it while it's hot. Go back to your room, take a shower and have a good sleep." "I'm not even sleepy anymore," she muttered softly and turned the spoon around in the bowl. "Are you sure this is a hangover soup?" Although she had never tasted it, she imagined that hangover soup would have a weird taste. But looking at this bowl, not to mention the taste, there were lotus seeds, lilies, walnut kernels, red dates, green plums, and there were a few things she didn't recognize. "What is it?" "The color is beautiful and the fragrance is quite attractive. This is a hangover soup. It should be so." Sio looked at it and felt that there was nothing wrong with it. It was not a dark dish after all. "This is my first time cooking it. I found the tutorial from the internet. The other ones may not taste very good. I think this one should be okay. I happen to have it at home. We have all the ingredients, so just give it a try." As he spoke, he lowered his head and took a sip from her spoon, then straightened up and pursed his lips to taste it, and then said to her seriously, "No problem." Soo-yoon was so moved that she didn't know what to say. He was too attentive. Not only did he search for recipes online, but he also considered her taste and even helped her taste it. Without saying a word, she quickly drank up the whole night's sobering soup. The sour and sweet taste is really good. After drinking it, your body feels warm and you feel much more refreshed, and your head doesn't hurt so much anymore. "I'm sorry," she said, putting down the bowl. "I thought you wanted to say thank you again." Sio looked at the empty bowl and expressed satisfaction. "Thank you, but what I want to say more is, I'm sorry. I didn't expect my drinking capacity to be so bad. I didn't drink much before. I promise I won't drink like this again. This is the first and last time." "Once," she swore, raising a hand. "I made you worry." Staring at her deeply, Sio pulled down one of her hands and put it on his chest. "Just let me worry. If you want to drink in the future, I will drink with you. When I'm not here, you won't be able to drink, can?" "Yeah." She approached Sio's arms and nodded. "Go and wash up and sleep," Sio said softly, kissing her forehead. Soo-yoon leaned against his neck and coquettishly said, "No, I'm not sleepy at all now. Sio, I have an idea that's not very mature yet and I want to tell you." "Huh?" Sio put his arm around her shoulders and responded lightly. "In the past, I tried to make new products, and the perfumes I concocted were all based on the public. From the perspective of ordinary people, I made all the popular models. To put it bluntly, they were the so-called hot models and best-selling models. But, I want to do something different." This is an idea that has become stronger and stronger in her mind recently, but she hasn't fully figured out how to do it or whether it's feasible, so she hasn't said anything yet. Perhaps I was taking advantage of the drunkenness, or perhaps I just wanted to talk to Sio, so I told him. "You want to make an exclusive high-end model?" After thinking about it, Sio said. Standing up, Soo-yoon looked at him with admiration. He was worthy of being a big shot in the fashion industry and a leader in trends. He had already guessed what she was going to do before she even explained. Yes, I want to do it, she nodded cautiously and said seriously. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 125. Chapter 125 Holding her bright future in hand. Yao pondered for a moment and pointed out the key point very directly, to a certain extent, you are still a newcomer. Suyun nodded, that is indeed true. Although she has been in the industry for a long time, she has always been working behind the scenes. In fact, few people know that she is a perfumer. All her previous works were shamelessly taken over by Wulan, and her former reputation and aura were taken away by Zhang Shiwei. Although she is doing it now, and the new student has given her enough room to develop, in any case, she can be regarded as a newcomer. Who are the exclusive high-end models targeted at? Either rich or noble. That is not within the reach of the general population. It is very expensive, and naturally the people who use it are very picky. What they are looking for are well-known perfumers with reputation and status. Not to mention in the perfumery circle, even people in other industries will have the level they have heard of. Just her? It's not that it's difficult, but it's basically impossible. I know that I have no fame or honor now, so in addition to winning the award in this annual competition, I also have to make preparations. When I told him this, I already had a rough outline in my mind. Initial thoughts. Yao raised his eyebrows, realizing that she was not just thinking about it, and became very interested. What preparations? Recently, I want to think carefully about the creative ideas of new products and make 2 models in advance. Even if they are not very successful, at least there will be lessons learned. It's okay after thinking about it, Yao nodded, but it will be very hard. I enjoy doing what I like to do, she spoke from the bottom of her heart. Being able to do what she likes is already very pleasurable. Yao's mood brightened when he saw her stretched smile. He put his arms around her and suddenly held her in his arms. He stood up and walked upstairs. Suyun didn't understand what he was going to do, so she raised her eyebrows and asked. He smiled slightly, I agree with what you said, so, I think I should do something that makes me happy at this moment. Suyun quickly understood and her cheeks turned red. The long night is indeed worth enjoying. You're late, she lowered her voice. Although no one was around at this time, Zhang Shiwei was still very nervous, afraid of being seen. Fortunately, she is very familiar with the structure of the entire laboratory. She knows where there is surveillance and where it can be avoided. And just in case, she came over for a patrol in the afternoon. Under the guise of looking for problems, she became familiar with the terrain again and made complete preparations. But she didn't expect that Rosen would be late again. He seems to have no sense of time. He asks her to be punctual every time, but he is very unpunctual. But I can't do anything to him, so who can ask for help from him? Just like this moment, she immediately smelled the smell of alcohol all over his body, but she couldn't say anything. She could only frown and cover her nose with one hand. You went to drink. Is your nose very good? He smiled disapprovingly and moved closer to her. Then why don't you smell it again? What did I eat? As soon as he got closer, the smell of alcohol became stronger, making her feel sick, and she quickly took 2 steps back. Don't do this. Aren't you still shy? Rosen reached out and touched her cheek. Rosen smiled playfully. This is also a kind of exercise for you. As a perfumer, how can your nose be insensitive? Okay, stop making trouble. Zhang Shiwei had no intention of chatting with him. Time is very tight, we must seize the time to find out the problem. Remember what you promised me, and, you are like this now, can you do it? Reaching out and pressing the elevator button, Rosen looked her up and down meaningfully. Don't you know whether I can do it or not? Zhang Shiwei. Soon she arrived at the laboratory where new products are researched. The doors were locked and everything inside was put away. Fortunately, She came to inquire in advance and knew where the failed samples were placed. She turned on the light carefully, still feeling a little worried. Worried. Except for a night watchman, there was no one else in the laboratory. She specifically said hello to the night watchman, saying that she had to work overtime and not to disturb her. Then she entered the elevator and went down to the underground garage, waiting Rosen's arrival. In this way, we can ensure that they will not be disturbed and can study carefully what is wrong with the formula. Come and see. Zhang Shiwei turned to face the operating table and face the few small bottles she took out. These are all recent failed samples. They are prepared according to the formula you gave. The portions are very precise, but it's just not right, it tastes impure and impure. After all, this matter is related to her future, and she still takes it very seriously. I think there might be something wrong with one of the flavors in it. Is it lavender? I think your other raw materials might conflict with it. What do you think? She talked for a long time without getting a response, so she turned around and saw Luo Sen leaned against the table at the back, half lying on the table, as if he had fallen asleep. Zhang Shiwei was very popular at that time. Rosen, she called his name in a low voice with anger, you promised me. You are here to do business, how could you do this? Hey, I'm a little tired. Let's take a rest and don't make a fuss. Rosen stretched and said lazily, it's just that the taste is different, but it's not a big deal. Originally, the environment, humidity, and temperature will all have an impact. Don't you even understand this? He walked over slowly, passed her hands, took the few vials, and put them on the end of his nose. After smelling it, he threw it into the trash can nearby. Garbage. Hey, Zhang Shiwei didn't expect that his hands would be so fast and she wouldn't be able to stop him in time. What if I'm discovered tomorrow? He smiled mockingly. Tomorrow? If you have a successful work tomorrow, why are you still keeping this kind of garbage? Hearing his words, Zhang Shiwei's anger immediately subsided a lot, and she became a little excited. Are you serious? Look at you, you can't keep calm at all. Shaking his head, Rosen had already started to get some raw materials and experimental tools from the laboratory. You look like this, even if you have successful works, you will easily be. It's not your fault that people can see through it. This fragrance is the same as making AI. You need to be able to hold your breath, endure it, and persist for a long time. Only in this way can you get the greatest speed and courage. Even though Zhang Shiwei was now relaxed enough, her face was flushed by his words, but she couldn't hold back her anticipation. Her eyes were fixed on his movements, as if he was holding something in his hand. Is her bright future? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 126. Chapter 126. Do you really have no idea? Zhang Shiwei's nose is not sensitive enough and her talent is not high enough. Coupled with the lack of exercise, her ability has deteriorated so quickly. However, she still knows the basic process operations and principles, so she is also helping out. I have to admit that Rosen is quite presentable when he is serious about his work. He carefully dropped the extracted essential oil into it, added a few more ingredients, stirred and blended it, and finally put it on a shelf to rest, waiting for the result. There are 3 test tubes in total, and he made 3 attempts. In his words, in the end, there will be one that is the result we want. We can't tell, and there will be some unexpected surprises. You mean, the same style is similar? Zhang Shiwei asked. He raised his eyebrows and reached out to lift her chin. You're not too stupid. Don't avoid his touch at first, Zhang Shiwei said, but the similarity of the same style is not very useful. No one will buy 2 very similar flavors. Of course, they will choose the one they like the most, and the other one is relatively the same useless waste. You can't say that, natural selection. The one chosen by the public is the best-selling one, and the other one can be used as a copycat. The taste is similar, but the price is much cheaper. Do you think the profit will be considerable? He smiled meaningfully. Zhang Shiwei's eyes widened. Then isn't this equivalent to making pirated copies of your own products? In the process of making perfume, it is always necessary to eliminate some defective products that do not meet the expected effect. These defective products are directly destroyed, but the child who is left behind said maliciously that this is the first time she has heard Rosen mention it. Yes, the profits from counterfeiting and piracy are indeed very attractive, but no one who makes authentic products would do this. This is simply destroying their own brand. Don't say that. If someone else imitates you, that's called piracy. You can't steal your own things. After a pause, he smiled mockingly. Besides, it's not like you've never done this before. That's right. Don't you have any idea where you got those things from, Wulan? This sentence simply touched the secret deep in her heart, the one she least wanted to mention. Stop talking nonsense. Although he knew it was not a big deal, being mentioned in this way was like being stripped of the fig leaf, and she was very unhappy. Wulan's products are all my hard work, how can they have anything to do with counterfeiting and piracy? Whether it has anything to do with it or not, I don't care. What I care about is that you promised me something, but you never did it. And, turning around to face her, his hands naturally went around her body. They surrounded me. You've been avoiding me for days. As soon as he got closer, the breath from his body rushed to her face, and it was so heavy that she couldn't breathe. Zhang Shiwei's body tensed unconsciously. I said, if you want a chance, you wait for me. I'm so impatient to wait. Little Weiwei, are you kidding me? As he spoke, his fingers had penetrated from the bottom of her clothes and slowly slid up her skin. Huh. Taking a breath, Zhang Shiwei held down his hand. No. This is a laboratory. Hearing her words, Rosen turned his head and glanced at the surrounding environment, slowly looked around, and then locked his eyes on her little face. Oh, you reminded me, this is a laboratory. Before she could breathe a sigh of relief, she felt her body suddenly lighten up, and he lifted her up with his hands and put her on the table behind her. I've never tried it before. In the laboratory, he smiled evilly, and while approaching her lips, his fingers had accurately found the hidden button of her underwear from behind her, and untied it with a click. Zhang Shiwei was very panicked. She still remembered what the doctor said, so she quickly pressed her hands against him and said, Rosen, wait. It really can't work. No, his originally smiling face turned gloomy in an instant, and his expression quickly darkened. Weiwei, are you trying to burn the bridge across the river? Don't forget, you're not getting along with me on this river. No, at this time, she didn't dare to anger Rosen. It's not that I avoided you on purpose. It's really. She gritted her teeth and decided to tell the truth. It's because I'm pregnant, so I can't. A flash of surprise flashed in his blue eyes, but after a second thought, Rosen reacted, Mr. Luos. Zhang Shiwei nodded. The doctor said that my recent physical condition is not very good, and he strictly ordered me not to do it again. I didn't mean to make excuses. I also want to be with you, but you know, I have my difficulties. Hearing what she said, Rosen finally let go of his hand, looking very uninterested. So, you are going to have a baby soon. Weiwei, I thought you were a new age woman who knew what was more important to you. Unexpectedly, you still chose such a vulgar path as getting married and having children. You have to know that after you gave birth to a child, you would be a perfumer. In one line of work, career life is over. Shaked his head, as if he was very sorry. Sliding down from the table, she hurriedly said, it's not that full of words. Who said that a woman can't have a career after getting married and having children? As far as I know, Vivian, a master perfumer in the industry, also returned to her career after having children. Now it's almost palace level. In the industry, the name Vivian is indeed well known. Rosen nodded and did not refute her. He just pointed out sharply, you are right. Vivian not only started working hard again after giving birth to a child, but also got divorced and raised her own children holding the baby, but... Are you her? Zhang Shiwei. She was speechless for a moment, and before she could think of words to fight back on her behalf, she heard him continue, your sense of smell, your knowledge of information, your proficiency in business operations, and your years of experience and qualifications in the industry, which one do you have? Compared to Vivian? If she can do it, can you definitely do it? I'm still saying the same thing, Weiwei, my name is Vivi, and you are also called Weiwei, but how did you get to where you are today? Do you really have no idea in your heart? These words really touched people's hearts, and Zhang Shiwei looked extremely embarrassed. Rosen, you can't be so ugly, can you? I'm not speaking harshly, I just want you to recognize the facts. Now that you have made a choice, you should not hesitate. People, there is no best of both worlds, there are always choices. In the face of success and fame, and having a husband and children, I think, you should know what's best. It was undeniable that his words were cruel, but they were indeed the most true and struck her deep in the heart. Zhang Shiwei was silent for a while and said slowly, actually, I have already planned not to have this child. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 127. Chapter 127 I only like to play in the circle. Before Rosen could say anything, she quickly said, but... Just because I don't want this child doesn't mean I can continue to have with you now. My body has inflammation and I can't bear it anymore. It's not good for you either. Wait. Let me recover again, okay. Looking at her, Rosen said nothing. Don't worry, I will definitely do what I promised you in order to appease him. Zhang Shiwei came over and gently poked his chest. I have already found out that Suyun is on vacation recently and may have a long trip. Okay. I'm afraid there won't be much chance in Sioux City, but if we travel far, we should find an opportunity to make a move. Really, Rosen was very doubtful and had no trust in her. It's true, her new product has been successfully developed. I guess that the long trip may be to prepare for the next new product. Zhang Shiwei felt very angry when she mentioned this. She has frequent problems. Not only does she have to deal with problems with the formula, but she is also in poor health. She also has to deal with such a dangerous person, including Rosen. But what about her, Suyun? After leaving Wulan, not only did she not fall into despair, but she thrived in her new life. In her hands, the new product seemed like a toy, succeeding so easily. If possible, she really wanted to put a few drops of sulfuric acid into Suyun's perfume. However, before that, it would be a good choice if she could be given to Rosen. With Rosen's craziness in bed, she wanted to see Suyun being tortured to death. Oh, success! Obviously, Rosen was also surprised. He has been in this industry for a long time. He also studied under a famous teacher, and with the blessing of various resources, he has achieved today's results. Is that woman so strong? This cycle is really short. The people who searched for the information said it was successful, but after all, it involves confidentiality, and they can't get their samples. Who knows what the success is? Zhang Shiwei paused, but no matter what it is, it will always be successful. It's not as good as what you made. She's just a little smart and talented. She really thinks she's a genius. At least, compared to you, that's true. Rosen glanced sideways at her and told the truth. However, although he did not hesitate to praise Suyun, from the bottom of his heart, he did not think that the little girl was better than him. A woman who is just starting out and has not seen much of the world in a small place. Even if she has some talent, it is not a piece of cake to be able to make some amazing masterpieces. Compared with her talent in perfumery, Rosen was more concerned about her taste in bed. That woman is really a beauty. Disgusting. After being dissed by him, Zhang Shiwei pushed him coquettishly. Seeing that he was so lost in thought that he wanted to drool, she could guess that it was because of Suyun, and she became even more unhappy. Rosen, it's not necessary for Suyun. If you want to play, we have some beauties in Su City, so I'll arrange it for you. I'll arrange it for you, Suyun. She thought about it and felt that she couldn't let him put all his attention on Suyun. Otherwise, he kept urging and exerting pressure. Not only would it be difficult for him to do it, but what would he do if one day he hooked up with Suyun? However, what he didn't expect was that Rosen was very disinterested. No need, he looked coldly. Do you think I can be admired by everyone? Am I so hungry and unscrupulous? Seeing that he was really angry, Zhang Shiwei was surprised and puzzled. No, of course I didn't mean it like that. I just feel that my body is not suitable now, so I don't want to neglect you, so I will make arrangements for you. You should have some fun. Don't worry, if I look for you, I will definitely find something clean, and I will never let you have any worries. Before he finished speaking, Rosen loudly interrupted. I said no, don't you understand? Hand held her chin with one hand and tightened it hard. Although I like to play, I don't want to play with everyone. What I want are the best in the industry. Speaking, he approached her and took a deep breath on her neck. At this moment, he looked like a greedy vampire. Zhang Shiwei was so scared that her body trembled involuntarily. Fortunately, he didn't have fangs, and he didn't really bite her. He just pressed against her neck and gently bit her carotid artery with his teeth. Only you have the smell I like. Zhang Shiwei. She felt him slowly leaving, and then let go of her hand, but she still didn't let out a breath, for fear that he would change his decision the next second. In other words, he likes people in their profession. Perfumers are mixed with spices all year round, so they have a special smell of mixed spices. Some people are not used to it and find it more pungent, but some people, you will like it very much. So, this is what Rosen likes? She thought a little vaguely, her brain quickly sorting out her thoughts. At this moment, the timer on the side made a beeping sound, and the time was up. Zhang Shiwei immediately walked quickly to the operating table and reached out to the 3 test tubes. I am a little nervous and a little looking forward to it, but I am afraid that it will fail, so I dare not actually take it. What are you afraid of? Rosen reached over her hand and took the things directly, tried them one by one, and finally selected the bottle in the middle. Okay, this is it. He was so sure that Zhang Shiwei leaned over and took a sniff. The smell was rich and fragrant. This was very close to the expected smell, but it would take some time for it to evaporate to be sure. However, his confident look made Zhang Shiwei feel that it was done. At least in this matter, she still believed in him and had no doubts at all. Rosen, if I win the annual competition this time, I will definitely thank you very much. With her eyes fixed on the test tube and the liquid inside, she said excitedly, as if what she was holding was not a test tube but a trophy. Rosen's dark blue eyes blinked, and he hugged her from behind. His body was close to hers from the waist down, almost inseparable. You are just a little liar. If you can't satisfy me now, why talk about the future? The warm breath sprayed behind her ears, and the voice was like a demon. Zhang Shiwei's body stiffened. I have special circumstances, I'm not lying to you. I actually. SHH, Rosen said, putting an index finger in front of her lips, are you really willing to help me? Zhang Shiwei was silent for 2 seconds and said cautiously, yes. If it is, then it's easy to handle. His laughter sounded creepy. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 128. Chapter 128, Waving Fists Wildly. If you want to help me, there is no other way. He grabbed her shoulders with both hands, turned her around hard, and pushed her forward with his waist. You can try something else. Others, Zhang Shiwei was puzzled, but after meeting his malicious gaze, his body language, and his hand on the belt around his waist, she quickly understood. Just thinking about it made her sick to her stomach. But she didn't want to offend him, so she said softly, "Rosen, please be patient for a moment, I will help you find two beautiful ones in the circle. Or where are your other female companions? You can find them, I will drive you there. You know, I will have pregnancy symptoms when I am pregnant, I." Before she could finish her words, he grabbed her hair and pulled her head back. "Don't talk to me about useless things. You are pregnant, what does it have to do with me? It's me, the seed. Why Wei, you'd better not play tricks in front of me. You're still too young. Don't forget the annual competition. It's hard to say whether you can win the prize or not." His eyes were sinister, and he looked extremely vicious at the moment. "I chose you to give you a chance. You'd better, don't be disrespectful." Facing Rosen like this, she was still afraid after all. Forcing a smile, she said softly, "Rosen, don't be angry. I didn't mean that. I..." "Stop talking nonsense." He let go of his hand, pressed it directly on the top of her head, and pressed it down hard. The other hand untied his belt. "Your mouth shouldn't just be used for talking nonsense, it should also be used for talking. Something to do." Being forced to squat down, Zhang Shiwei felt annoyed and resentful in her heart, but at this moment, she could not resist. Clenched his back molars, suppressed the overwhelming nausea in his heart, and slowly approached him. As time passed, Rosen slowly closed his eyes, and the atmosphere in the entire laboratory became particularly weird and lewd. Both people had their own thoughts, and both ignored their surroundings until the lights in the laboratory suddenly turned on. Originally, they only turned on the lights on the console and left the door ajar. They thought that everything had been arranged and no one would come at this time, so they didn't feel so vigilant. The first person to be frightened was Zhang Shiwei. She didn't even have time to stand up, so her subconscious action was to turn her face and look in the direction of the door. Then, she saw that familiar figure. Standing by the door, Luo Yuanhang looked at them in shock, with extremely complicated emotions in his eyes. Anger and shame intertwined to torture him, leaving him unable to utter a single word. His hands were clenched into fists. All the power seemed to be concentrated in his throat, but it seemed that a switch was blocked there. "Why? Can't get out." Zhang Shiwei wanted to get up in a panic, but Rosen had no intention of stopping, and instead ended the fight as quickly as possible. Cough, cough, cough. She coughed repeatedly, but her face turned red and she did not dare to look at Luo Yuanhang. Although she understood that sooner or later he would know about it, he knew that it was two different things than seeing it with his own eyes. She was not open enough to perform unscrupulously in front of him. After finishing, Rosen arranged his clothes unhurriedly, and even looked at Luo Yuanhang provocatively, but he didn't care at all. "Zhang Shiwei." At this sound, Luo Yuanhang shouted with almost all his strength. He never thought of it. The woman whom I have pampered and treasured for several years would actually kneel at the knees of another man. In addition to anger, there is also shame and disgust. My mission has been completed, I'm leaving first. Raising his hand and patting Zhang Shiwei's shoulder, Rosen looked relaxed and natural. He walked in the direction of Luo Yuanhang nonchalantly, not taking it seriously in the face of his overwhelming anger. "Stop." Luo Yuanhang grabbed his arm and said through gritted teeth, "You just left like that?" Rosen's lips curved into a proud smile. "What if? Do you still want to see the whole set? Originally, Luo Yuanhang was still suppressing his anger. After all, Rosen had a special status and he couldn't be impulsive. But as soon as he said these words, his anger level immediately exploded, and he punched Rosen directly, hitting Rosen on the cheek. Asshole. After receiving a solid punch, Rosen was not angry at all. He staggered after being beaten. After stabilizing his body, he touched the corner of his lips with his hand and saw a trace of blood. This Quan, for the sake of Ms. Yao, I won't argue with you, but if you do it again, I won't be polite. Who wants you to be polite? Luo Yuanhang was simply irritated by his words over and over again. Now that he had started, all his emotional vents were used in his fists. He rushed towards Rosen, waving his fist wildly. And Rosen was just as he said, not polite at all. He punched the same one after another, and the two people struggled together. Zhang Shiwei vomited in the sink for a while before she finally regained her composure. When she turned around, she saw that the two of them were already fighting each other, fighting fiercely. Standing at the edge for a while, she stepped forward and said, "Stop fighting, you all, stop fighting." However, as if no one heard her words, the beating became more intense. The beating was carried out from the laboratory to the outside. The stools, chairs, and tables were kicked over, and the glass was broken all over the floor. Zhang Shiwei glanced outside anxiously. It was hard to say whether such a big movement would alert the night watchers. If anyone saw this, it would be big news. Stop fighting! Stop fighting! After shouting several times to no avail, she almost shouted, "Luo Yuanhang! Do you want everyone in the world to know?" This sound really had a big effect. Luo Yuanhang was stunned for a moment, then stopped. At the same time, he received a heavy punch on his chin. It hurt so much that stars appeared in his eyes. Fortunately, when he stopped, Rosen also stopped, released his knees from his chest, and slowly stood up. "Yuanhang, Yuanhang." Seeing them stop, Zhang Shiwei hurriedly ran forward and bent down to help him up. She knew that for a person with Rosen's personality, it was useless to tell him to stop, and no matter what Luo Yuanhang did, in this way, you still have to take care of your own face. He staggered to his feet, his head still a little dizzy, and the person in front of him was shaking. He turned his head and glanced, and when he saw Zhang Shiwei's seemingly concerned face, he suddenly became angry and waved his hand vigorously, "Get away." Being thrown away by him, Zhang Shiwei staggered and almost fell down, but Rosen helped her up. This made Luo Yuanhang even angrier. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 129. Chapter 129. I have my own reasons. Luo Yuanhang's face turned green. Let her go. Why should you take it so seriously? Rosen seemed to be going against him. He got close to Zhang Shiwei's face and pretended to kiss her. Seeing this scene, Luo Yuanhang couldn't help but rushed forward to continue fighting, but Zhang Shiwei stopped him. That's enough. Luo Yuanhang, you want to recruit the Night Watch, and you want everyone in the world to know what happened here. She spoke so righteously, as if she was not the one who did something shameful just now. However, she did find out Luo Yuanhang's Achilles heel. This was really not a glorious thing for him. If he publicized it, he would only lose face. Get out, he pointed a finger in the direction outside, get out of here. Zhang Shiwei did not move, but gave Rosen a wink. Standing there, Rosen smiled disapprovingly, with contempt in his eyes. Frowning and winking desperately, Zhang Shiwei was really anxious. If she didn't leave, she might not be able to control Luo Yuanhang's temper. Shrugging, He walked slowly to the elevator, took the elevator and went straight downstairs. Yuan Hang. She called his name, but Luo Yuan Hang roared, "I told you to get out. Didn't you hear it? I know you're in a bad mood right now, and I also know you're angry, but can you calm down?" She pointed at the door of the laboratory with her finger. "The new product has just been developed and I have tried it without any problems. The formula has also been adjusted. Just wait until dawn and submit it to the review team for re-inspection. After passing it, it can be officially put into the production line. I guarantee that this will become a hit and will bring unlimited vitality to the company. If you get angry for a moment now, then you will definitely destroy more than just Wulan. Do you understand?" she shouted loudly. Standing there blankly, Luo Yuanhang remained motionless, his eyes even distracted, as if he didn't hear what she said. Seeing that his wound was still bleeding, Zhang Shiwei quickly took his hand and said, "Yuanhang, I have my reasons. I will explain this to you slowly. Now let's bandage your wound first, and then ask someone to clean it up here, otherwise it will be too late to go to work tomorrow." Turning his head slowly, Luo Yuanhang looked at her blankly. "The reason?" "Yes," she nodded affirmatively, and held his hand tightly. "I have been with you for so many years, don't you still believe me? I really have my reasons. Yuanhang, let's bandage the wound first, okay?" "Haha, what a hardship." He sneered twice, pulled out his hand forcefully, and said sarcastically, "Zhang Shiwei, do you think I am a 3-year-old child? I saw it with my own eyes, with my own eyes." Pointing at his own eyes with his finger, he wished he could dig his eyeballs out. "Get out of here, I don't want to see you, you don't have to worry about it here." He turned around and wandered towards the elevator, looking as if he was heartbroken. Voyage, unable to stop him, Zhang Shiwei turned around and looked at the mess here. After thinking about it, she went back to the laboratory to put the samples and formulas in her bag and put them away, and then dialed the number downstairs. The on-duty phone number said, "There is a little trouble here in the laboratory due to an experimental accident. Please call someone to come up and clean it up." Luo Yuanhang drove the car, driving around aimlessly at an extremely fast speed. His mind went blank, and what occasionally flashed were the unsightly images he saw in the laboratory before. Don't dare to think about it. Don't want to think about it. In his memory, Wei Wei was such a gentle and lovely girl. She could act coquettishly, be a little naughty, give him little surprises, and be very flirtatious in matters between men and women. She almost satisfied all his ideas about women. He could use Suyun for her, he could use the name of the company to express his love for her, and even, almost ruined his career for her. But in the end, she was kneeling under another man. His fist hit the steering wheel hard, he hated it so much. After so many years together, he had never made such a request, and he was reluctant to let her do this, but she actually made a request to another man. Luo Yuanhang felt sick and wanted to vomit. I felt dizzy and couldn't control my hands. The car was swaying like a drunken man on the empty road. After making several sharp noises, it rushed to one side uncontrollably. Passed. Boom. Hit the tree hard and stopped. The head is broken and the blood is flowing. Suyun woke up early in the morning and felt very comfortable. There was no headache at all after a hangover. It seemed that the bowl of sobering soup he had given him during a temporary teaching session was still very useful. The smell of breakfast came from downstairs. She took off her slippers and went downstairs. When she turned the corner, she saw a man in an apron serving breakfast. It was really a beautiful morning. Hurry downstairs and come up behind him, hug him from behind, and give him a sweet kiss on the cheek. "Good morning." Si Yao laughed, turned his face and stole a kiss on her lips. "Sit down and have breakfast. There is already a lot on the table, including pumpkin and millet porridge, fried dough sticks, fried eggs, black pepper sausages, And some cut fruits. It makes me happy to see all the colors. She thought this was enough, but she didn't expect him to bring another glass of honey lemonade. I checked, this is also a hangover cure, drink it. I'm sober and I'm completely fine. That's not okay, he insisted, just drink it to cleanse your stomach. Having no choice but to drink the lemonade, she had no choice but to drink the lemonade. Fortunately, it still tasted very good. What are your plans for today? Yao asked while eating breakfast. What about you? She has no inspiration for a new work yet, and it's vacation time, so she has no plans for the time being. Yao did not answer her, but opened the phone and clicked the voice message. Good morning, Mr. Si, you have a total of 3 regular meetings today, including a dinner party. Mr. He from Hanhu has made an appointment with you at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The times of the regular meetings are respectively yes. Before he finished speaking, he pressed stop playback and looked at her. That's about it. Suyun. Well, President Sida is a busy man. Then I'll make the arrangements myself. She was very spontaneous. While talking, Su Feng had already arrived and was waiting quietly in the foyer. Did the person get delivered safely last night? Although Su Feng had nothing to worry about, Yao was still concerned about the fact that he had done a good job in sending his wife back for him. It's been delivered, Su Feng added, it's been delivered downstairs. Su Yun heard it and said, is it Arian? You sent her back last night. Yao glanced at her, yes. It's really quite fragmented. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 130. Chapter 130. It's just that he's so nice. Su Feng nodded, yeah. Thank you. Su Yun thanked her sincerely, but someone on the side was annoyed again. Is he the only one you want to thank? You don't have to be so polite. Before he could speak, she added, you said so. Yao. Well, he said this, dig the hole yourself and jump out of it yourself. Su Feng on the side looked at his boss, who was choked and still had no words to reply. He was really surprised. I am afraid that only with Madam, the boss would be so helpless. It may be a little late today. If you need anything, call me, Yao said while putting on his coat. Well, she stood on tiptoes to help him adjust the collar of his shirt, remembering the trip. By the way, I mentioned a trip before. Do you have any ideas about the destination? Have you decided where to go? Not yet. What? It's nothing if you haven't already. Arian has a few recommended places. Since you are so busy, why don't we just book it ourselves? She, Zhao Xian, and Arian went on this trip together. In fact, she just had to decide the place and itinerary by herself. Yao nodded without any objection. Okay. You're the best. She turned her face and kissed him on the cheek, her voice soft and sweet. Yao smiled after receiving a sweet kiss. If I had known you were so easy to coax, I should have arranged a trip for you every month. Okay, she accepted happily, but it's time for you to go to the company, otherwise you will be late for the first regular meeting. Hush him with your hand and send him out the door. Seeing the car drive away, he turns around and enters the house. Since he has agreed, the only thing left is to communicate with Yan and Zhao Xian. While turning on the TV to watch the daily news, he called Arian. Arian, was it you who sent me back yesterday? Oh, you still remember, Arian teased her. I thought you had stopped reading and didn't remember. Actually, I really don't remember much. I really need to reflect on it and not drink so much in the future. She doesn't drink much, and she doesn't know how good her drinking ability is. She didn't expect it to be so bad. Then after I drank too much, did I go crazy or something? Yes, I'm chattering too much and it's really noisy. I still refuse to go home and insist on drinking, so I won't let you go. Her mouth opened wide in surprise. Was she surprised that she was such a person? Real. Pht, of course it's fake. I'm just kidding you, Arian laughed out loud and said, it's okay. You went to sleep after drinking. I asked you which building in Yujinghaoding you live in, and you said I don't know. The key is that I can't get in without the access card. Fortunately, I met Mr. Si. After a pause, she added, by the way, I said yesterday that you lived in Pinghu Garden not far from Yujinghaoding, and then I fooled Sister Zhao. You almost got betrayed. Do you remember this? Son, don't let it slip. Suyun. Sure enough, drinking caused trouble. Arian, thank you. Thank you for nothing, isn't that what you should be doing? But I didn't expect that you are already living with Mr. Si. This progress is really fast. Arian was tidying up the house and folding clothes, holding the phone between her legs. I'm sorting my head and thinking. Suyun thought to herself, if she knew that they had already received the certificate, and that they had received it early, she would faint from fear. Sister Yun, I'm not talking about you. Let me say something that may not sound good to you. Although Mr. Si is really good and very tempting, you still have to be careful. I'm not saying that Mr. Si doesn't okay, it's just that he's so nice, you know. Wu Arian actually knew that what she said was very unpleasant to hear, but the so-called words of advice were offensive to the ears. From her point of view, Suyun is good at everything, but she has a bit of a love mind. She had sacrificed so much for Luo Yuanhang before, but what happened to her in the end? The conditions of this Si Yao are 10,000 times better now. It would be best if it lasts for a long time, but what if it doesn't? It's not that easy to live in a wealthy family. Many people who marry into a wealthy family end up miserable in the end. She hopes Suyun can be happy and doesn't want to see her end like that one day. I understand. Suyun nodded, knowing that she was doing it for her own good. No, you don't understand. Suyun. Si is always a diamond-level bachelor. The circles he comes into contact with and the beauties he comes in contact with will be as big as they are. Sister Yun, I'm not here to badmouth you, but you should have a guarantee for yourself. Anyway, you should be more, think about it for yourself afterwards. Her thoughts became a little confused. Hey, forget it, I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Suyun laughed, I know you are doing it for my own good, little housekeeper. Why didn't I notice before that you were so nagging? I ask you, when Su Feng sent you home, did you follow him? Have you been chatting all the way? Thinking about Su Feng's boring temperament, if Yan kept talking to him beside him, the scene would be quite joyful. Go. I'm serious with you, and you're joking with me. Don't tell me anymore, she blushed unconsciously, thinking of that stuffy gourd-like man. Apart from the misunderstanding when we first met, he was actually it feels quite solid and reliable. At least for her, a man like Su Feng is much more reliable than Si Yao, and he feels so secure. Thinking of this, he suddenly came to his senses and quickly shook his head and patted his cheek. Oh my God! What is she thinking about? She put Su Feng and Si Yao together for comparison, and she still felt safe. It's not like she's choosing a boyfriend. Arian, Suyun called her several times without hearing her response. Ah, yes, you said it. What are you doing, crackle? She just heard the sound of Arian slapping her cheek, and she didn't know what happened. It's nothing, there are mosquitoes, let me swat them. Tell me what you want. Mosquitoes, she really doubted, this season, mosquitoes. But he didn't think much about it and continued what he had just said. I said, didn't you say you had an idea about the trip before? Si Yao said it's okay, we will decide it ourselves. Then when you have time, take some time and let's have a good chat. I can do it anytime, why not just do it today? Okay, I'll do it later. Soo-yoon was about to make an appointment to meet at a place later and have dinner together to talk about travel, but a news on TV attracted her attention. Early this morning, a car accident occurred on the XX main road in our city. A white Mercedes-Benz lost control, crashed into 3 road pillars, and then hit a tree on the roadside. The injured have been sent to the hospital for treatment. It is reported that the injured person is Mr. Luo Yuanhang, CEO of Wulan Company. The cause of the accident is still under investigation. Please see the relevant report sent by our station below. End of this chapter.